Hello, dear friend. Thank you for taking a few minutes in the middle of this quiet night to stay with love and tears. Perhaps each of us has had a moment like that when our hearts suddenly feel empty, even though we are still with the person we love. When everything is still peaceful, but inside, there is a cold space that no one can touch. Tonight I want to tell you a story. A story without noise, without obvious betrayal or lies, but the kind of betrayal that makes people's hearts most vulnerable. Betrayal in the mind. The main character of that story is Elena, a woman who has passed half of her life thinking that nothing can make her heart flutter anymore. But then, just a small care, a warm voice made her lost in a dream without even realizing that she was going too far. If you've ever felt lonely in your own marriage, if you've ever longed for someone to listen even just once, then perhaps Elena's story will resonate with you. Now take a deep breath, relax your mind, and let Love and Tears tell you about a woman named Elena and the journey her heart took when no one knew. Elena used to be a very ordinary woman, so people say. She had a peaceful home, a hard-working husband, and 2 obedient children. Every morning, the sound of the coffee maker mingled with the birds outside the window. Everything seemed to be in order, calm, steady, nothing special and nothing new. However, somewhere in Elena's eyes, there was still an emptiness that was hard to name. Are there moments of silence that only those who have lived through half a lifetime can understand? The silence of a woman who spent her youth taking care of others, and when she looked back, no one really listened to her. One day when Elena was tired of work and family life, she met Daniel, a new colleague. He was nothing special, just a man who spoke softly and knew how to listen. But it was that knowing how to listen that opened the door to something Elena did not expect. At first, everything was innocent. They only talked about work, about trivial things. He asked about her health, asked if she had had lunch. She smiled and said, "I'm used to skipping meals," and Daniel just replied, "Women shouldn't get used to being tired, Elena." A seemingly simple sentence, but it made the woman's heart flutter. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to her in that tone. For so long, she had forgotten what it felt like to be truly cared for. Elena didn't realize when she had started to look forward to his messages. Not because of love, but because of the feeling of being understood, something she had lost in her 15-year marriage. People often say that men cheat because of their bodies, while women fall for their emotions. Elena had done nothing wrong, at least in her mind. She hadn't met Daniel after hours, hadn't texted him too late, hadn't said anything ambiguous. It's just when she's sad, she thinks of him. When she's lonely, she wants to tell him. That's all. But sometimes, just like that, is the beginning of all the undercurrents. She began to tell Daniel things that even her husband never knew. About the loneliness in the house that was too quiet. About the times she cried in the kitchen because she felt forgotten. And Daniel, he just stayed silent, listened without judgment. That silence was so gentle that it made her believe she was safe. But is anything really safe when the heart has begun to lean in another direction? As time passed, Elena realized that she no longer smiled when her husband talked. She no longer felt interested in being hugged by him. She still lived with that man, still cooked, still fulfilled her duties as a wife, but her mind was elsewhere. where there was someone who always asked her with warm eyes. Sometimes, just hearing Daniel's voice on the phone, her heart skipped a beat. Sometimes, just reading an old text message, she smiled like a girl in her 20s. She never thought she was betraying anyone, because physically, she was still completely faithful. But who knows, sometimes the soul left before the body could follow. Elena didn't realize that that feeling was creeping in, little by little taking over her. Not loud, not fierce, just a small stream, but enough to erode every foundation of the marriage she once believed in. Have you ever wondered, can a silent hug save a marriage? Or is just a warm look from a stranger enough to make us lose our way? Elena didn't know. She only knew that every time her husband asked, "What's wrong?" she smiled evasively. She was afraid that if he looked deeply into her eyes, he would see Daniel in them. A middle-aged woman like Elena is not easily carried away by temporary emotions. They have gone through enough pain and loss to know where the limit is. But when the lack in their souls lasts too long, sometimes even a small light can make them take the wrong step. Elena still comes home on time, still prepares dinner, still takes care of the children. But in her mind, she compares. She thinks, "I wish my husband knew how to say small things like Daniel." Then she blames herself. What am I doing? But emotions are the hardest thing to control in the world. The more she forbids them, the more they rise. The more she tries to forget, the more she remembers. One night, when the whole family is asleep, Elena sits alone in the corner of the kitchen, looking at the light reflecting on the glass of water. She suddenly realizes she's crying. Not because of guilt, but because of confusion. She didn't know when she had left her husband, the man who used to be her whole world. She remembered the early days of their love, when just a handshake was enough to make her heart flutter. But time had taken everything away, leaving only dry habits. Perhaps if he had said, "I miss you," once things would have been different. People say emotional affair, adultery in the mind, is the most dangerous form of betrayal. It leaves no trace, no evidence, but gnaws at the soul every day. Because when a woman loves with her mind, the body is just a shell. Elena began to distance herself from her husband. She smiled, less, talked less. But in her heart, she was still full of emotions, just not for the person beside her. Every song, every line of poetry, every gentle afternoon light made she remembered Daniel. She didn't need to see him, didn't need to touch him. Just thinking about him was enough. But that enough made her gradually lose herself. One morning when Daniel transferred jobs, he sent her a message. "Thank you for the beautiful days. Live happily, Elena." She read that line over and over again, dozens of times. And then, for the first time in many years, she felt truly empty. Not because she lost him, but because she realized her heart had left this marriage a long time ago. After a while, Elena tried to mend things. She started talking more to her husband. She learned to share, learned to listen. But the cracks in her heart are not easy to heal, because sometimes what kills a marriage is not physical betrayal, but indifference that lasts so long that the heart has to find warmth elsewhere. That night, sitting by the window, Elena smiled softly as she looked at the man sleeping soundly beside her. The moonlight fell on his face, peaceful and familiar. She suddenly realized love never left. It just slept for too long, waiting for someone to wake it up. Elena gently placed her hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat still intact. Perhaps she thought sometimes the greatest betrayal is not loving someone else, but forgetting the person who loved you to the end. Love, if not cared for, will gradually fade away. And loneliness in marriage is the most fertile ground for mental adultery. But as long as one person is willing to stop, willing to listen, willing to speak out, then perhaps that heart still has a way to return. And Elena, she chose to return. Not out of obligation, but because she understands true love does not lie in fleeting emotions, but in the will to stay, to learn to love again from the beginning. Perhaps each of us will have a moment like Elena, when the heart is lost without anyone knowing. But if we are still sober enough to look back, we will understand that love is not finding someone new to make us tremble, but making the old heart tremble again for the person who has been with us for so many years. Have you ever experienced the same feeling as Elena? The feeling of someone making your heart flutter even though you know you shouldn't. If so, leave a silence in your heart and ask yourself, is what we are missing love? Or just a gentle greeting that we have forgotten to give each other? Elena still sits by the window, where the moonlight falls on the floor like silver drops of milk. She no longer shed tears nor smiled. There was only a strange sense of peace that permeated every breath. Outside, the wind gently tapped against the window, carrying with it a faint night scent. The scent she had become familiar with when she was young, when everything was clear and forgiving. Tomorrow she would wake up early again, prepare breakfast, make coffee for her husband as usual. Maybe he still wouldn't notice. Maybe he would still rush out of the house. But this time, Elena wouldn't wait for a miracle. She would be the one to make the first move start. With a small question, a longer look, a gentle touch. Because sometimes, as long as one person is brave enough to love again, then a marriage never truly dies. She wondered quietly if one day Daniel returned, if he looked at her with the same eyes as before. Would this heart still tremble? She didn't know. Maybe there is. But this time she will know to stop before she gets lost. She understands that not everyone who makes your heart flutter is the one you should approach. And perhaps maturity is when you know how to choose the right thing, even though your heart is still restless. Elena closed her eyes, listening to the steady breathing of the man lying next to her. In the silence, she clearly heard her own heartbeat. No longer confused, no longer vague. There was only gentleness, quietness, but so real that it made her want to believe again. In the distance, the sky began to brighten. Elena said softly in her heart, "It's a new day. Maybe my heart has just been born again. And who knows, somewhere out there is someone like Elena sitting alone in the middle of the night, wondering if they can love their ex again with a new heart. Maybe they will find the answer. Or maybe they will just smile, then be silent. Because sometimes that silence is a way to say, I still love."